So good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Anam Cara Thursday night meditation program. Just with all my heart and all my love, it's so good to be able to have you together in this virtual environment, to be able to share and have each other's company, at least in this challenging time. And it's really by gathering together that we get to support each other's practice, so that we can really get grounded in what's our highest nature, what's the truth of who and what we are. That's what Anam Cara is all about, and that's what all the practices from the great traditions are about. Knowing your highest nature, being able to live from that space and bring it into the world. Because we're surrounded by all the examples of people living from their lowest nature and bringing that into the world. So we really need to amplify what we're doing as a group, as individuals, to uplift and support ourselves, each other, and humanity in waking up and being awake to this is all the divine. And every being that we encounter is literally the divine as they are. And it's really the practices that we do, meditative, chanting, contemplative study, that help clear our vision so we can see that. It's not just a philosophical concept, it's not a spiritual belief, it's the felt experience in the moment. So that's why we gather. So satsang means keeping the company of the truth. And the truth is embodied in the practices, and it's embodied in each and every one of you. So you are that living embodiment. You are a living carrier of the truth of the infinite, the divine. Bring that into the world. So desperately needed. So as a way of helping to step aside from the mind, the events of the day, the events of the week, we start with the opening mantras. And the opening mantras are an invocation of our highest nature. And various aspects of it. You know, it starts with Shri Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. That's an invocation of the Great Mother, the divine feminine that is birthing moment by moment all that is into the world as her own being, as her own self. And then the mantras go on. There's the Ganesh mantras, an invocation of that power of the infinite to remove the obstacles that are in the way of our directly knowing that, directly perceiving that, directly living that into the world, breath by breath. So when we're calling on Sri Ganesh in those mantras, that's not somebody different, that's not just a happy elephant-faced God. That's your nature. That is your nature. When you bestow grace on yourself by stepping aside from a thought that isn't reflective of your highest nature, you're Ganesh shifting out of that obstacle. That's what that means on a very, concrete level. And then the Om Purnamada Purnamidam, that's the invocation of the vision that from the infinite comes the infinite. And even when the infinite manifests all of creation, it's pristine infinitude. It's all embracing loving consciousness, remains ever the same, and embraces all as its own self. That too is who and what you are. That's the nature of your being. That's the foundation of your consciousness. The mind is like just a little ray of that, but you're that blazing fullness of that consciousness. So the opening mantras are a way for us to invoke that and start to step into that. So we'll start with those. Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai Gajananam Bhuta Ganari Sevitam Kapitan Jambu Palacharu Bhakshanam Umasutam Shokam Vinashakarakam Namami Vigneshwara Parapankajam Shri Lanishaya Namaha Shri Lanishaya Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamandaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Mata Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. Namaste. Once again, with all my heart, I welcome you to our program this evening. And that stillness, that silence, that mantra brings us to, that dissolves the mind into that stillness, that void, that emptiness, that is the heart. It's dark, it's mysterious to the mind, because the mind is really noise. The mind is all the collection of thoughts and feelings and stuff going on. So in the stillness, that's where the full flowering of knowing the truth of who and what we are and all this creation unfolds. And then it informs our vision. It informs the mind. That's what we come back to over and over again. And so this evening is the evening before doing the Heart Sutra. This is the fourth Thursday night of the month. And tonight we're going to be doing the Heart Sutra. And the Heart Sutra, as we do each month, is a way of opening that spaciousness into just what's that beyond everything. And it's a path and a text that really reflects that. As you negate, step aside, say not this, not that, not the eyes, not the ears, not the nose, not the mouth, not your gender, not all the things that we identify with, as you start to clear those away, more and more spaciousness of unbounded awareness becomes available to us. And you know, the text is known as the Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hrdayam. So it's Bhagavati, it's the great goddess, the great mother. And so she's the one who gives birth to all Buddhas. She's the one. And so we get to be surrounded by her now. And so this is, I'm welcoming you into my Devi temple, which is, of course, my home. And through these tankas that we have with us now, one is of black Tara, and one is of red tar, and of course in the center is the Mahakali yantra. So the divine feminine that gives birth to wisdom, to direct knowing, gives birth to the universe of direct, all these different forms that the mind is one of, and is actually an instrument for perceiving and knowing, created by the infinite to know the finite. You are the infinite's organ of perception. You are the infinite's eyes, ears, nose, mouth. It doesn't define who you are, but these are instruments for knowing the finite, and consciousness itself is what knows the infinite. And the practices are about bringing us back to that direct knowing so that we can then live that into the world. So over and over again, that's what we come back to. And especially at this time, it's, and by that I mean a broader sense of historical time, that the divine feminine is particularly important, that we need to balance the what's happened in the human psyche And it means that we need that loving, kind, related, connected function that has archetypally been known as the divine feminine, the great goddess, the beloved for many. It's really that understanding and that experience that this poem comes from. This is from Kali's Bazaar. My heart is a temple where my beloved is worshipped with great respect and love. My heart is a spacious refuge where I rest contented with my beloved. My heart is a hall of mirrors constantly reflecting my beloved's beauty. My heart is your home, oh, my beloved Devi. So no wonder my home reflects her. That's all there is. We do all these other kinds of practices because the mind is a busy little bee, and and we keep it busy with some practices. But if we can just rest in that loving divine embrace, that living presence, then we leave all the practices behind. All the practices. Once you're in that state, you're there. As soon as the mind moves out, then there are practices to help it dissolve again. It's like Buddha said, he was talking to a group of monks and he was saying, oh monks, if you're going to cross the river and you find the canoe, what do? Well, you get in the canoe, you cross the river. Oh monks, when you get to the other side of the river, what do you do with the canoe? Well, you put it down and you keep going. You don't carry it around. Once we enter that state, you don't have to do the practices. Your consciousness is the unfolding of that. But until we're established in that state, unshakably, live from that state, we practice. And we have these sublime practices to remind us over and over again of the truth of who and what we are. And in this book, now this is the essence of the Heart Sutra, and this is a text by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And if you want to get into more of the study of the Heart Sutra, this is a great text to engage with. And so His Holiness the Dalai Lama has written this, and it's really exquisite. And you get to see that, as we're doing the Heart Sutra as a practice, as a chant, and it involves kind of a contemplative practice even as you're doing it, there are so many other layers that one can get into. And if you have the kind of mind or intellect who likes to do that, then this is certainly a great text to dive into. Others just want to get into the state and do the practice and let go of everything. That's fine too. You don't have to busy the mind if it doesn't need to be busied. But to have some understanding, I thought I'd read some of what His Holiness the Dalai Lama has written about the Heart Sutra. And he starts off in one of the first chapters talking a bit about the Buddha, so we have an understanding. According to conventional understanding, the spiritual tradition that we know as Buddhism began its evolution more than 2,500 years ago. There is, however, a divergence of opinion among Buddhist scholars as to exactly when the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Shakyamuni, was born. Now, most scholars place his birth approximately 2,500 years ago, and some Tibetan scholars, such as the great Sakya Pandita, argued that it was more than 3,000 years ago. As a Buddhist myself, I find this uncertainty about the precise dates of the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, the founder of the tradition, a little bit embarrassing. I strongly feel that out of reverence and respect, we should subject to close scientific scrutiny some of the authentic relics of the Buddha that are still available, and therefore clarify this matter significantly. So Buddha, it's very interesting to me, the Dalai Lama's approach to Buddhism has really been informed by his love of science. And he has no problem with science looking at things, and if it disputes it and can authoritatively say, no, that's not true, he'll go with science. So it's not a religious dogma. It's really based on what do we know and what's the evidence. And really, that's the heart of the Buddhist tradition, the evidence that comes through direct knowing, the evidence that comes from refining this instrument of knowing, our mind and our consciousness, so that we can really experience directly that truth in a refined way, that all the patterns of mind aren't distorting it. But it's very empirical in that way, in a way of really training our consciousness to directly know and perceive these things. And in many ways, that's also what the Heart Sutra is part of, a set of practices for doing that. The Dalai Lama goes on, but leaving this detail aside, if we observe the life of Buddha Shakyamuni, we will see that he went through a certain process of spiritual development. Born the son of a king, he was raised among all the palace luxuries. Eventually, he gave up the comforts of his royal lifestyle and adopted an ascetic way of life, and went through a period of 6 years of severe spiritual practice. Later, he abandoned these ascetic practices as ultimately unsatisfactory and simply sat in meditation beneath a tree, which we call the Bodhi tree, vowing not to rise until he attained enlightenment and liberation. And as a result of this long and arduous process, he did eventually attain complete, unsurpassed, perfect enlightenment. Now, the Buddha's life exemplifies a very important principle. A certain amount of hardship is necessary in one's spiritual pursuit. We can also see this principle at work in the lives of other great religious teachers, such as Jesus Christ or the Muslim prophet Muhammad. Furthermore, I think that the followers of these teachers, if they wish to attain the highest spiritual realizations within their traditions, must themselves undergo a process of hardship, which they endure through dedicated perseverance. There is sometimes a tendency among the followers of Buddha to imagine, perhaps only in the back of their minds, that, well, although the Buddha went through all those hardships to attain enlightenment, they aren't really necessary for me. Surely I can attain enlightenment without giving up life's comforts. Perhaps such people imagine that because they are somehow more fortunate than the Buddha himself, they can attain the same spiritual state as he did without any particular hardships or renunciation. This, I think, is mistaken. And just as the Buddha adopted an ascetic lifestyle, leading the life of a true renunciate, the first disciples of Buddha had a firm grounding for their spiritual practices within the framework of a celibate lifestyle. And because of this, throughout the history of Buddhism, the monastic community has played an important role in the dissemination and further development of Buddhist teachings. In addition to imagining that a certain degree of hardship and renunciation is unnecessary, certain people also mistakenly conclude that the moral and ethical teachings of Buddhism are also somehow superfluous to the real teachings of the Buddha. But if we look closely, we see that each precept evolved from a teaching given by the Buddha about how to respond to a particular ethical challenge, a particular situation that arose in a follower's life. In this manner, eventually, all the ethical precepts and codes of conduct for the members of the monastic community evolved, and these in turn led to the adoption of a certain way of life, a life in accord with the teachings of Buddha. Buddha also spoke extensively on philosophical topics meant to enhance his followers' practice and their understanding of these ethical precepts. So in this way, we see that the examples of the Buddha and his earliest disciples are relevant to our own spiritual practice. While Buddhism has adapted to the culture of each new civilization it has encountered, it nonetheless retains its emphasis on morality and discipline as essential for spiritual maturation. If we ourselves want the attainment described by Buddha, the deep concentration, the deep penetrating insight, then we too must endure some of the hardships and observe that ethical behavior. So shortly after attaining enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha gave a sermon in Varanasi sharing the fruits of his realization. And the sermon is referred to as the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. The word Dharma here refers to Buddhist teachings themselves. It was this sermon in which the Buddha developed what would become the framework for the entirety of his teachings, the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Truths are the truth of suffering, the truth of its origin, the truth of its possibility of cessation, and the truth of the path that leads to that cessation. In essence, the Four Noble Truths say that we all naturally desire happiness and do not wish to suffer, and that the suffering we wish to avoid comes about as a result of chain of causes and conditions begun even before our birth. If we are to pursue our aspiration to gain freedom from suffering, we need to clearly understand the causes and conditions that give rise to suffering and then strive to eliminate them. Additionally, we must clearly understand the causes and conditions that give rise to happiness as well, and actively practice them. This is the essence of the Four Noble Truths. So having established the framework of liberation in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha further detailed 37 steps along the path to its attainment. These are called the 37 aspects of the path to enlightenment. These aspects show specifically how the principles of the Four Noble Truths are to be applied in one's day-to-day spiritual life. There are two primary components to these teachings: the cultivation of single-pointedness of mind, which is known as calm abiding, and the cultivation of penetrative insight, also known as vipassana. If we examine the 37 aspects of the path to enlightenment in relation to these qualities of mind, we find aspects relating to both qualities. Now, it's often joked that though Buddhism doesn't have gods, they have lists, lots of numbers of lists. So here we'll have the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and then we'll have 4 correct endeavors, and then 4 supernatural feats, and then 5 faculties. And these go on and on. This is what makes up those 37 precepts that are the foundation of following the Buddhist tradition. I'll go through them briefly. The first 4 for the foundations of mindfulness are the foundation of mindfulness of the body, the foundation of mindfulness of feelings, the foundation of mindfulness of mind, and the foundation of mindfulness of phenomena. So very often when we hear, mindfulness spoken about all over the place, written up in everything from the Wall Street Journal to, Time Magazine or whatever, it's this really kind of a superficial understanding. When you start to dive into really what Buddha was talking about, that mindfulness is to go further and further and deeper into developing this one-pointedness of focus, of awareness, of concentration. So the typical practices that have been adopted culturally of mindfulness, and everything from sports psychology to corporate consultants teaching mindfulness to executives, they're not talking at this level. This is the level that one enters into in order to really say, no, I want to get free, totally free, radically free of suffering. I want that Buddha discovered. Then as one deepens one's practice of these 4 foundations of mindfulness, one will develop greater enthusiasm for positive or wholesome activities. Thus we have the second list, namely the 4 corrective endeavors. So you're both practicing mindfulness, but you're also cultivating positive things. So where these 4 are abandoning negative acts, preventing future negative acts, enhancing one's existing positive qualities and past wholesome acts, and laying the foundation for future wholesome acts. So we don't just expect the mind to produce positivity sort of just by the way. You cultivate it. Say, oh, the seeds that I plant, I want to cultivate them so that they grow and become strong. These are those. Now, since these activities require a well-cultivated and unusually focused state of mind, the Dalai Lama says, they are called supernatural. Therefore, the next 4 factors are called the supernatural feats. These are once the spiritual aspirant lays the solid foundation of mindfulness and ethical conduct, he or she will be able to further develop that single-pointedness of mind, and therefore accomplish mental activities that cannot usually be sustained by a lesser degree of concentration. So these 4 supernatural feats are the supernatural feat of aspiration, the supernatural feat of joyous effort, the supernatural feat of concentration, and the supernatural feat of inquiry. So all of the first 12 factors relate to methods of enhancing one's capacity to remain focused single-pointedly on a chosen object of meditation. This enhanced capacity in turn leads to enhancement of all one's other positive spiritual faculties. Thus follows these 5 faculties: the faculty of faith, the faculty of joyous effort, the faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of meditative absorption, the faculty of wisdom and insight. And these then develop into what are thought of as 5 powers. So the power of faith, the power of joyous effort, the power of mindfulness, the power of meditative absorption, the power of wisdom or insight. So you can see there's this progressive cultivation and of concentration, focus, cultivation of positive qualities that really develop into these powers, and they're powers that have been cultivated as qualities or virtues of mind. That these are capacities that we have the innate ability to really develop. So Dalai Lama goes on, it says, when one develops these powers, one will naturally be able to follow the core of Buddha's path, known as the Eightfold Noble Path, which constitutes these next steps. So here's where you get to that famous Eightfold Path. And that consists of the right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Sometimes also translated as right absorption, even right rapture, because it's this entering that state of nirvana, that state of enlightenment. And then the final 7 factors in this list are known as the 7 branches of enlightenment. The factor of enlightenment consisting of right mindfulness, the factor of enlightenment consisting of right aspiration, the right factor of consisting of joyous effort, the factor of enlightenment consisting of right joyfulness, the factor of enlightenment consisting of right tranquility, the factor of enlightenment consisting of right concentration, and the factor of enlightenment consisting of right equanimity. So together, the practice of the 37 aspects on the path to enlightenment form the core of the practical application of Buddha's teachings on the 4 Noble Truths, and therefore of the Pali tradition of Buddhism. These in turn can be said to be the foundations of Buddhism and the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And so when we understand that as kind of a foundation, that helps us to then deepen our understanding of what the text is that's chanted as the Bhagavati Prajna Paramita Hrdayam, and the Heart Sutra. Because it was the Buddha, through Avalokiteshvara, speaking about what's that state, trying to put it into words, that when you get into this state and you start to be able to see all that's happening within the field of consciousness that we think of as mind, if we think of it as really just a field of awareness, then arising in that field of awareness are different things: thoughts, sensations, perceptions, a sense of self, a sense of mind, a sense of body, an identification with the body. All these things are arising in that, and you're not any of them. Not this. You've stepped back. That's what the Heart Sutra is inviting us literally into the state of Buddha mind, literally into that state of enlightenment. If we let go of everything, that's already fully present, fully existent, right here, right now. It is the ground of everything. So it's not something the poor mind has to produce. The mind is always used to thinking of how it's going to produce something, posture something, look at something. No. All that, set it aside. And then that spaciousness, the infinitude of that living truth, living presence is already there. And so the Heart Sutra, which we're going to do in a few minutes here, is a way of coming into that. So when we chant the Heart Sutra, we'll be going through that. If you don't have it, you can also download that, of course, anytime from the Anam Cara Meditation Foundation website. But we go through it and we chant it aloud together 3 times. And then after the 3rd time, and the English part of the text ends with the Sanskrit mantra of the Heart Sutra, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi, Swaha. Gone, gone, gone beyond, completely beyond. Hail the goer, the enlightened one, Bodhi, Swaha, so might it be. Then we'll continue with that Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate with a drum. And that will reach a crescendo, and then we'll just sit in the stillness. Sit in the stillness, in that silence. And whatever arises, no, it's just one of the 5 skandhas. It's just one of these. Skandhas means aggregates, heaps, lumps, these things appearing in that field, that self-luminous field of consciousness. And so you just keep with the stillness, and anything that arises, you're just watching it come, watching it go. Has nothing to do with who you are. Come to rest in the stillness. Come to rest in the spaciousness of that pure awareness, that field of awareness that we gain access through doing the Heart Sutra. So we'll start this now. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, coursing through deep Prajna Paramita, clearly saw that all 5 skandhas are empty, transforming all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness, emptiness exactly form. Sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are marked by emptiness, not born, not destroyed, not stained, not pure, without gain, without loss. Therefore in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of thought, no realm of sight to no realm of thought, no ignorance and also no ending of ignorance, to no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death, no suffering and also no source of suffering, no annihilation, no path, no wisdom, also no attainment. Having nothing to attain, bodhisattvas live prajna paramita with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, thus no fear. Far beyond delusive thinking, they attain complete nirvana. All Buddhas, past, present, and future, live prajna paramita and thus attain anuttara samyak sambuddhi. Therefore know that prajna paramita is the great mantra, the wisdom mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra, which completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not deception. Therefore set forth the Prajna Paramita mantra. Set forth this mantra and say, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Swaha. Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva, coursing through deep Prajna Paramita, clearly saw that all 5 skandhas are empty, transforming all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness, emptiness exactly form. Sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are marked by emptiness, not born, not destroyed, not stained, not pure, without gain, without loss. Therefore in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No color, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of thought. No realm of sight to no realm of thought. No ignorance and also no ending of ignorance. To no old age and death, and also no ending of old age and death. no suffering, and also no source of suffering, no annihilation, no path, no wisdom, also no attainment. Having nothing to attain, bodhisattvas live Prajna Paramita with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, thus no fear. Far beyond elusive thinking, they attain complete nirvana. All Buddhas, past, present, and future, live Prajna Paramita and thus attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajna Paramita is the great mantra, the wisdom mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra, which completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not deception. Therefore set forth the Prajna Paramita mantra. Set forth this mantra and say, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Swaha. Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva, coursing through deep Prajna Paramita, clearly saw that all 5 skandhas are empty, transforming all suffering and distress. Shariputra, form is no other than emptiness, emptiness no other than form. Form is exactly emptiness, emptiness exactly form. Sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all things are marked by emptiness, not born, not destroyed, not stained, not pure, without gain, without loss. Therefore in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, thought, impulse, consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, touch, object of thought, no realm of sight to no realm of thought, no ignorance and also no ending of ignorance, to no old age and death and also no ending of old age and death, no suffering and also no source of suffering, no annihilation, no path, no wisdom, also no attainment. Having nothing to attain, bodhisattvas live Prajna Paramita with no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance, thus no fear. Far beyond delusive thinking, they attain complete nirvana. All Buddhas, past, present, and future, live Prajna Paramita and thus attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore know that Prajna Paramita is the great mantra, the wisdom mantra, the unsurpassed mantra, the supreme mantra, which completely removes all suffering. This is truth, not deception. Therefore set forth the Prajna Paramita mantra. Set forth this mantra and say, Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhi Swaha. 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 Resting in that stillness. Gate, gate, gone, gone. Gone beyond, completely beyond. Hail the goer, Buddha, you. You are that. Gone, gone, gone beyond. Hail the goer, Bodhisattva. And now we'll chant the Tara mantra. Om Tare Tuttare Ture Soha. Tara is Prajna Paramita. She is the highest wisdom. She is the mother of all Buddhists. She's the mother of you. Om Tare Tuttare Ture Soha. She's the power that leaps forward to remove suffering by bringing us back to the truth of who and what we are. So we can then bring our qualities of boundless love, boundless compassion, boundless wisdom, and unshakable equanimity into this world. Om Tare Tuttare Ture Soha. O Tarama, bless us with your Prajna Paramita, your highest wisdom. Om Tare Tuttare Ture Soha. 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 Om Tare We end with this prayer. And may all our practices truly benefit everyone. And may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. Om Tarama. Highest wisdom. Dissolving us into that. Removing the suffering that comes from being identified with this thought, that feeling, this role, this conflict, all those things. Coming home to what's the truth of who and what we are. So with all my heart, all my gratitude, I want to thank you for coming this evening and bringing your highest self, your pure intentions about living the practices and bringing them into the world and being a conveyor of that wisdom, of that truth, of that heart into the world. And so we gather together to support each other and strengthen our practices so that we can really affect the world in a positive way. And cultivating this understanding, cultivating what our real nature is, means that we keep coming back to that. We remind ourselves of that throughout the day. And that's part of the practice, is that remembrance, whether we do it through mantra or chanting or silent repetition of mantra, contemplations, visual forms that remind us of the truth. All of these things combined help us to remain steady in that understanding, in that knowing, in that truth, so we can live it into the world. So that's what we continue to do. And I mentioned before that next Thursday is the fifth Thursday, and there's a surprise. It's a different kind of surprise. So next Thursday, we won't actually be having satsang, because on Wednesday, I have to have some surgery for just a shoulder and arm kinds of issues that have been a part of some old injuries that finally are saying, oh, we need that attention. So I'm having surgery next Wednesday, and won't be able to do satsang on that Thursday, the 30th, or the following Thursday, most likely. That's August 6th. So I think the next time we'll definitely be getting together is August 13th. And so I want to give you a little homework to do between now and then, a little practice. A practice of the heart, really. And, we were talking about how do we cultivate the mind so it stays in touch with the highest. And this is a simple practice. And it's two parts of it. One is when you first wake up in the morning, when you first wake up and the mind first starts to move, practice in that moment. And it might be something like saying like, oh, my beloved, what gifts of grace do you have for me today? Oh, my beloved, what gifts of wonder might you have for me today? Oh, my beloved, oh, the divine, oh, God. Call it on that however you will. But train the mind right from its first movement to be attuned with your highest nature, and that all day, every moment is the unfolding of the divine, is the unfolding of grace, is the unfolding of that creative impulse that comes from the Great Mother. So we want to cultivate the mind's ability to stay attuned to that, not to just immediately jump into its to-do list. Later on, the to-do list might actually be one of those things that you discover was an unfolding of grace. But cultivate that practice that when you first wake up in the morning, you're saying to the mind, oh, my beloved, what will you unfold for me? What gifts will come this day? And that leads to the second part of the practice, which is at night, as you fall asleep, you're laying in bed, you've set aside the day, the last thoughts that you have in your mind are to review and to be thankful. Oh, my beloved, oh, the divine, oh, God, look what you've given to me this day. And go through these different gifts that you've received today. And they might be little ones, little insights. They might be the smile of somebody you passed. There might be something in nature, a bird chirping in the tree that caught your attention, and that was a gift. Any number of things that when we start to tune into them, we can see that power of revelation, that power of transformation, showing itself moment by moment. But we're training the mind to be attentive to that. The mind has been trained to be attentive to problems, issues, challenges, conflicts, this and that. We've trained it to do that. Now we have to train it to do some other things. So these two little practices, one in the morning, one in the evening. And do that each day for the next 2 or 3 weeks. You might decide to do it beyond that. And then if you'd like, email me. I'd like to be able to share some of what people have experienced by doing those simple practices and what it has helped your mind become attuned to. So that's a homework assignment. And once again, I want to thank you all with all my heart and all my love for coming this evening and bringing your sublime presence to our evening, the strength of your practices, lending that to the practices of the evening, and for living those practices into the world at a time that it's so challenging to stay established and stay committed to one's practice. So thank you so much for all of that. I love you with all my heart, and I look forward to seeing you again in 3 weeks. And also want to thank you for all the ways that you support Anam Cara through donations, through sharing the e-newsletters, and the YouTube channel. So also in these next couple of weeks when we're not having satsang, we have all these wonderful videos up now that people can also dive into. So with all my heart, all my love, thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again. Namaste.